Xi Jinping is not known for his honesty, and that's not just with his people, it's with how they do business. And if it's not good for China and they're not getting a better deal than the person they're talking to, they usually get sneaky. Steve Lance is a host and producer at NTD. He says she is always cheating ahead of this summit. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I don't trust that guy as far as I could throw him. He's pretty little. I could probably launch him.
I think that's a good assessment.
Yeah.
The Chinese Communist Party, generally speaking, are not honest brokers. And you can just look to their history. It's, decades of strife, killing. Over 80 million people have died unnatural deaths, many of them being directly murdered and tortured and killed by the Chinese Communist Party. And so really, right now, what you're seeing in China is an existential crisis for their survival. And so when you have a regime like this that's been railing since COVID, you remember they had COVID zero there with the lockdowns, and their economy was on the brink of collapse, so they had to open it up. Otherwise, they would have loved to have kept everybody locked down. That's what authoritarians do. That was sort of the start. We've seen their real estate market with the collapse of Evergrande, the real estate giant in China, falling. And now with the tariffs, everything's just been compounded. And, of course, their oil supply getting cut off from Venezuela and Iran. They're in a desperate situation here. And so I think the United States needs to go into this meeting very cautiously, both in a literal, from a practical security standpoint, but also from a business standpoint. We shouldn't be too rosy-eyed with the big business delegations there, thinking that we're going to cut deals and everybody's going to be happy, because the end result from doing a deal with the devil is really never a good one.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people think Trump is the devil. He's going over there to try to tell Xi, here's the thing, stop funding Iran in their efforts to fight in this war, because we're trying to stop nuclear war in this world. So if you will agree to that, these are the deals we will make with you. And if it behooves China and he thinks it'll help their economy, he may bite at it. But the bottom line is China likes Iran. And so this meeting is double dipping on why we're going over there.
It's a great point. This isn't just about business. This isn't about President Trump resetting the business relationship. It's really about President Trump resetting the global order. Prior to President Trump's second term, during the Biden administration, we saw the BRICS, the alliances that the CCP tried to set up with other countries in our hemisphere, Brazil, Central and South America. So that's why, you look at what happened in Venezuela. That was a statement by this president to say, not so fast. He took Maduro out while there was a high-level Chinese delegation still in Venezuela meeting with Maduro. Maduro
screamed, "Come get me, coward!" Trump was like, "All right, here we come."
Right.
Yeah. And I think she saw that and was like, "Wow, this guy." This is the thing. She respects Trump. He doesn't like him, but he respects him, because when people are like the Chinese communist leader, they only respect power. That's why we got to put the smackdown on him. And I'm not saying we need to start a war with China. Nobody wants war anywhere unless it's absolutely necessary. In Iran, it is. So when we go to China, we have to go there with our big boy pants on. And I really feel like this delegation is going to march in there with their heads high, their shoulders back, and they're not going to walk in to lose.
I think President Trump, to your point, he speaks in plain terms. So oftentimes, I think the mainstream media doesn't, give him the grace that maybe they should.
They don't give many.
When it comes to his level of sophistication, they call it chaos and, lack of clarity. He doesn't know what he's going to do, what he wants to do. When you're in war, this is high stakes. And so one of the biggest tactics that you have is your unpredictability. So it's actually all intentional, the way the president attacks these things. No pun intended.
It's the art of the deal, man. It's the art of the deal. He literally put it in print, and still nobody can figure him out.
So
it's
true.
Like, read the book, dummies.
Circling back to another point that you made, I think it's a very important one, is, China likes Iran, and it's not just about the oil for China that they want to get out of Iran at a discounted rate, but they want an ally in that region in the Middle East. And not only are they an ally, they're like brothers, China and Iran, both the two most totalitarian regimes. They take on a slightly different form, but at their core, they're very similar. And, China has benefited tremendously every time Iran erupts or gets their proxies like the Houthis or, Hamas or Hezbollah to erupt. It distracts the United States, both from an attention standpoint and from a resource standpoint. And so if they lose that, that's a very big component in their asymmetric war that they've been waging on our country for decades.
Yeah, I'd like to say birds of a feather, but it's more snakes of a molting. I think the way the Chinese people have to live is horrendous. I had a Chinese foreign exchange student who had to go home because of COVID. They made them all get on the first planes out because they did not know. They just were so scared of it. It was the weirdest thing, but they knew about it better than we did because they created it and released it. But what's happening right now is Trump marching in there the way that he does. Everyone's like, oh, he thinks he's smarter. He thinks he's better. He doesn't think any of those things. He actually respects Xi Jinping as a leader because he knows that men in power have really big egos. And they got to stroke that a little bit in order to even get them to listen. That's why little dude from North Korea likes him so much, because he strokes his ego. He brings him a Big Mac. Everybody's happy. So with Xi Jinping, he knows you got to do that.
Yeah. There's certainly a certain level of statesmanship and diplomacy that goes along with it. But one thing that I think is hard for Americans, for any American, whether it's the president of the United States or you or me, we weren't raised in a communist country, and so we don't think like them. Thank goodness.
Yes.
But the way that these people operate is totally different. It's inhumane. I mean, if you think about what the Chinese Communist Party is doing to their own people, taking organs, okay? When you talk about human rights abuses, these people are literally, this isn't like a black market subsection of the population. The PLA, the People's Liberation Army, state-run military hospitals run by the CCP, they're literally harvesting organs at scale from innocent prisoners of conscience and then disposing of the bodies, right? So these are the people that you're dealing with.
Yeah, we know that. And we just choose to ignore it and then elect communists in New York. But I'm out of time, but I do want to know, how is Xi cheating? Is it by trying to get ships into Iran? Is it by what they're doing a roundabout way? I've got 30 seconds left.
Well, that's definitely a huge one. And it was interesting. There was a clip with, I think it was 60 Minutes with Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli prime minister. He was asked directly about what you just mentioned. And you could tell he was somewhat uncomfortable by the question. He didn't want to answer it, but he implied, he's like, we know stuff. I'm not going to say anything. And then you kind of have to read between the lines what that meant, that hopefully the United States knows about it. And we're going to be doing something behind the scenes and not taking it. But it's a huge concern. Yeah.
Well, China's got to get their oil from somewhere. And if you corner a crazy person, they will do anything to try to escape. And I think the leader of China is absolutely crazy. So we have to do this with kid gloves. But I know that this delegation is going to be fruitful. I just don't think we're going to get everything we want, but I think it's a good idea to go. I want to thank my guest, Oh my gosh, I dropped it on the floor. Hang on, there we go. I want to thank my guest this morning, host and producer at NTD, Steve Lance. Where do they go to learn more about what you're working on, Steve?
Well, we just released a documentary. It's called Unbroken, The Untold Story of Shen Yun. It has 2 tracks, a human interest track and then an investigative track that tracks the New York Times connections and perhaps ties to the Chinese Communist Party. That's Unbroken, Shen Yun, SHENYU.com.
Everybody check it out because the New York Slimes does not tell the truth. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.